This is Dying Your Way.
Welcome everyone to the Dying Your Way podcast. I am Claire O'Berry. I am a certified End of Life Doula. I am a co-founder of Dying Your Way, and I am a proud volunteer of Busselton Hospice here in Busselton, Western Australia. And today we have a very special guest who is technically my boss. His name is James Jarvis, and we're going to talk a little bit today about Dying to Know Day, which is August the 8th. And it's something of something nationally all over Australia where people come together every August 8th and talk about death literacy, and it's just a time to really focus a conversation on all end of life matters and kind of looking at it head on. And James has been gracious enough to come on so we can focus on that. But while he's here, I also want to bust some myths about hospice because a lot of people uh, almost think of it as a taboo word. And so we'll be talking about that and just other things that may come up. And I would just like to welcome now James Jarvis, CEO of Busselton Hospice Inc.
Hello,
Well,
Claire.
I
Hello to all of your listeners as well.
thank you so much for coming on. I really wanted to get into you have such an interesting background. I mean, from Carigini, Aboriginal work, community development. I mean, one of the things I really love about you coming on board as the CEO is that you have this incredible skill set that just ripples through, I think, the organization. You have such incredible team building skills, and you've really been incredible and nonstop with fundraising and really bringing that into the focus for the community. So we can't talk about the good things about Busselton Hospice enough, but I just really wanted to bring you on and have you talk a little bit about yourself and what Busselton Hospice is. So my first question, how did you get here? How did we find you? I mean, it was just tell us about your journey to get here and why you wanted to even be CEO of a hospice.
Yeah, wow, that's a how long have we got, Claire?
Hour,
So
we have an hour. You can go on and on. That's fine.
look, I for me it all starts in childhood. And one of my first memories is my mum dying at the age of 7. And so she was very young when she died. In fact, on the 2nd of August, just before Dying to Know Day, it'll be 50 years since my mum passed away. And so my journey in life has been absolutely defined and influenced by that experience of growing up without a mum and all of the impacts and consequences of that as it kind of flowed through our family systems and the grief or unresolved grief that was evident right through my family systems.
Can I ask you a question about your mother's death? Was it expected or not expected?
No, she knew. It was an incurable terminal disease. It was called idiopathic pulmonary hemosiderosis. So it's quite a rare disease. So when February 29 comes around, we have that kind of recognition of that rare disease day once every 4 years, and for me, I think it's really, really important. So my childhood was influenced by that, and as I was a teenager and getting older and starting to find my own way in life, I had a kind of absolute thirst to know who this woman was, and because no one would really speak about it, Claire. I had to really push hard to find out stories from my dad, and then his eyes had missed over, and that was it. I couldn't get much more from him, and I had to really press my sisters to try and understand who this person was, and it caused a break within the family system, as kind of sometimes these things do. But I found that this woman, who knew that she was unwell, knew that she'd had 3 girls and wanted to have a boy, Doctors had told her not to fall pregnant again because it would hasten her death, but she chose to have a fourth boy, a fourth child, meaning me. And but all through that, she's volunteering, she's working, she's keeping herself active within community. And I always kind of wondered about that yes, there was this suffering that she was going through, and she did suffer, but there was always this, it's not about me, it's about putting into community and being involved in community. And I kind of, as I sharpened my kind of community development toolkit over the years, that's the kind of approach that I've taken as well, really just to reinforce in my own mind that the reason why we show up to work every day is not about me. It's about helping other people.
Yeah.
So, as an adult, I'd kind of started off working in a bank of all places. And then I went overseas on my own steam, and I worked on a camp for kids over in America. And I was in the Bluefield, West Virginia, and it was a Salvation Army camp, and it was a big thing. I couldn't believe the poverty that I was exposed to, that a first world nation like America had such poverty in the kind of Appalachian Mountains area. And the kids that rocked up were young. They were aged between 5 and 12. And kids were turning up with non-accidental injuries. And so I really started to connect and resonate with me about, well, hang on, these kids are suffering. Why are they suffering? What is it that I can do to help? And so I eventually embarked on a career in child protection. And I guess I use that as a way to describe that.
So non-accidental injury, you mean you suspected child abuse?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And so for me, I was very interested in that. Came back to Australia, went to uni, got a degree in psychology, but ended up in child protection. And so I was working in child protection and various forms of family support for about 15 to 20 years all up, just in various different roles. But that's kind of been the cornerstone of how I've approached as I've matured and got older and experienced life.
That already gives me so much of a bigger picture of you. Child protection and adult protection too.
Yeah, very much. It's about the safety of people. It's about making sure that those people who are more vulnerable in our societies, and they are there, how do we connect with them? How do we have conversations with them? How do we not impose things on them? How do we walk alongside people and individuals to hear what it is that they think is important? Where are they walking to? What do they see in their future? How do they think that they can get there? And then, really at the end of all that is the final question for me, which is, well, how can I be of help, to you? But it's their future, their way. It's not about James imposing anything on them, but really walking alongside and helping them out.
And listening, just listening.
Very much. Yeah. It was always said to me, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that should be the ratio.
Yeah. That's good. That's really good. So you were working in community development, and I know you were in Donnybrook before you came to Busselton. So, I just really, so you get this information that there's this opening for CEO, and it's a hospice. Why that leap right there? And maybe that big of a leap, I don't know, but
yeah. Look, after I'd I operate to this, what I call a personal practice framework. It's my way of interacting. When you work for an organisation, they give you frameworks that you work from.
Right.
But I've spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what's my framework? How do I work to create change? What does that look like? And I guess when you start to develop that kind of personal, professional framework of your own, then you get a chance to say, well, does this personal framework match with the professional work requirements of the organisation I'm working for? And I did get to the stage when I was working in state government. It's really around about 2015 where I said, I can't do this anymore. My framework doesn't exist. It doesn't rest lightly with the governments anymore. And so I ended up working for not-for-profit. I went and I became a CEO of a not-for-profit organisation in Tom Price,
Oh,
the Newtiri Centre. And
wow.
that's where I continued that kind of work that I'd been doing with Aboriginal people. It was a mining town.
Carragini, yeah.
Yeah, we ran the Caragini experience.
Mm.
We had a cafe, we had a childcare centre, we had a
I
family
love
domestic violence
Carragini so
service.
much.
Yeah, so it was a kind of like an umbrella organisation, and it was really that kind of time where I thought, well, if you're serious about working in, of, and by the community, how far can you push yourself? What's your limits? And I found them, and I wouldn't recommend that to everybody. But it was kind of toward the back end of that 3.5 year stint up there that I got the phone call from my family that my dad had been diagnosed with a lifelong illness, and I felt that it was time to go back home and to reconnect with him. And so I did. I gave up the job of CEO in Tom Price, and I moved back down and picked up work with the Shire of Donnybrook Balinga, so I could be close by. Not that close, there are reasons why I kind of moved away as an adult. I kind of didn't
Yes, we
necessarily have.
do.
I didn't necessarily have the best relationship with my stepmother, and so I came back to reconnect with Dad, and I did. And was fortunate enough over 2.5 years to see him just about every week,
That's
go and spend time with him, just you know, hear those little gems that he used to share with me ad nauseum,
yeah.
that I hear myself saying to my own kids. And then he passed away in June 2022, not long after all the COVID stuff had settled down a little bit then. And I kind of, I had this idea in my head that local government would be a great place to work. 2.5 years at the Shire of Donnybrook Balinga indicated to me that I'd had my fill of local government. And so I threw myself out into the employment winds. But it was actually when I was in my next short-term contract that the job for Busselton Hospice Care came up. And after sitting with Dad for 2.5 years and watching this big personality, this big man, it was, when people ask you who's the person you'd like to invite for dinner if you had the opportunity, I'd always invite my dad. I don't know that I'd want to, have a celebrity there. I just want to have a good chat with my old man.
Yeah.
And to watch him slowly shrink, and his world kind of became very small, and he spent a lot of time in his recliner and looking at the wall, and it wasn't in a lot of pain, but his journey was not. It wasn't as good as what I think it could have been.
Yeah.
Hard because I don't want to impose anything on anyone. But when the palliative care team came around to have a chat with him, he lit up and he performed and did all these things. And I went, yeah, there's something there. So I actually applied for the job as CEO of Busselton Hospice Inc because it came up about that time, and I really went hard at it. Like, I left no stone unturned because I felt that I had a contribution to make. Again, not about me, about helping other people. And I understood that the area was really really under-resourced.
Yeah.
Not without passionate people in terms of resources or assets being people committed to a cause. Very, very much. Busselton was had been doing some really interesting things for a very long time without lots of people taking notice.
Well, hospice in the United States is really different than it is here in some ways. So it's yeah, I mean, both of my parents, and I had a similar situation. I had this great job in Oakland, California, and both of my parents went south at the same time, and they'd been divorced for 30 years. And so I left my job to go back to Texas to take care of them. And I mean, it was hospice is what saved my life. It literally saved my life because I went from elder care 101 to a PhD in death and dying over 6 years. I mean, it was that Uh, and if I hadn't had a hospice to help me and that whole palliative care approach, it would have been, well, I wouldn't have known what to do at all, you know.
Yeah,
And most of us do not have exposure to seeing people actually die.
yeah,
So there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of anxiety around it. And just having someone knowledgeable with me to kind of give me prepare me for what I needed to do to help and what I needed to do to put things in place was everything for me. But anyway, hospice is covered under Medicare in the United States. So it's a different model, but it's, you know, and we could talk about the models of healthcare, but I think it's really Busselton Hospice is very, very special, and I've been in many hospices, and there is something truly unique about that. But where I see you just throwing yourself into the fundraising that's necessary, I like to say that even nonprofits have to be profitable, you know, to stay in existence. And I also see that you have incredible business skills, you know, leadership skills, business skills, team building skills that, quite frankly, really inspiring to me. So,
well, thank you, Claire. I really appreciate that. You know, I think in any job you have your ups and downs, and you know the days where things are just going great, and then the next day they're not. And so it does take a certain amount of resilience. But I'm always inspired by the people that we come into contact with. You know, and if the work that we do can make their day a little bit easier, or they can be a little bit more or heard in the whole kind of you know situation that they find themselves in,
yeah.
then I think that's the fuel source. You know, it drives the passion.
So, as you're getting out there in the community, as you so often do, what are the myths that you find yourself having to bust to educate the public about the importance of death literacy, but really what is hospice? What are some of the myths that you run? I mean, I have a whole list of them, but do you want to jump in there and give a
Yeah, well, maybe we can compare and
okay.
contrast there, Claire. Look, when I go out into the community, I'm very clear on our mission and a vision, and I repeat that as many times as I possibly can because I don't think it's enough. You know,
You can
I
repeat
think
it here. I want to hear.
yeah. So the vision that the board of Busselton Hospice Care, we came to an agreement that for us, Busselton Hospice Care is supporting life lived well, dying, death, and bereavement. And our mission is everyone matters and no one needs to die or grieve alone.
Oh, I love that.
And so for me, it's quite a simple, it's easy to remember, it's easy to refer to, but it comes from a source of deep passion and commitment. Now, when I look back at the history of Busselton Hospice Care when I came here,
Mhm.
and I listened to people like Jenny Monson, who was one of the founders of Busselton
It's
Hospice Care right back in
amazing.
1989. Such an inspiring person.
Mhm.
Jenny will talk about this idea that it was a group of allied health professionals, doctors, nurses that got together and said, you know, we need to do this differently. We need to honour that spiritual journey. We need to bring the community's voice into the medical system to ensure that, you know, we're bringing the process of dying and death back to the community. And so that people don't have that experience alone. So when I go out and talk to people in the community, there's always an inquisitiveness. There are definitely people that are just not interested. They, you know, according to them, they will not die, or I'm not going
Right.
to die right now, so I'm not going to worry about it. And it's not something that them or their family have had much to do with. You know, it might be a long distance grandparent or somebody who passed away. And so there's a little bit of curiosity around that. I think sometimes having hospice in the title, particularly on our community education and connecting with people with some of the more, you know, demographic trends that have occurred of recent times where hospital systems are overwhelmed and they're trying to keep people at home as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So increasingly, we might reach out to people that are actually staying at home or wanting to stay at home,
And
and they
most
think,
most people do want to stay at home.
well, they do. I mean, the research is compelling on that, but they don't see that they're ready for hospice because they see hospice as the place where you go to die. And that the modern versions of hospice are definitely not about that at all. It's a resting place for you on a long journey, and the long journey might be the long journey that you're taking through your life-limiting illness. And we know that with advances in medical practices, that somebody diagnosed with cancer, it's not necessarily an immediate death sentence for those people. It's something that they learn to live with, and so why are we not on that journey with them, providing support as and when they need it? But I think that kind of initial reaction is, oh no, I don't need any support from hospice immediately. We need to work around that, and there are other ways.
Which is a shame because in my experience here at Busselton Hospice and just clients that I work with too, the ones that get the most benefit from hospice actually inquire about it or ask for referrals earlier. And the ones that do that earlier, they get the greatest benefit. And you ask for a referral, and you may be up to the criteria or you may not. You may be up to the criteria, and then all of a sudden you're in hospice and you get better. And then you fall off of it. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
But it's just that denial that you're talking about really is kind of a formula for a poor experience at the end of life because they've waited too long to prepare and get
Yeah.
things in place that matter to them.
I agree, Claire. I think it is something that needs to be talked about. And well, I mean, when I talk to my own children now, Claire, it's kind of like, oh, we're not talking about dying again, are we, Dad? And I say, yeah, of course we are. It's
How
what
old are your
happens.
kids? How old are your kids?
My eldest boy is about to turn 30,
Yeah.
and then 28 and 26.
Oh,
So
they need
yeah,
to be having this conversation for themselves too.
absolutely. There's no shirking the conversation, Claire. I can tell you. They know exactly what my wishes are. But interestingly, I've gone along to some death cafes, or what we call triple C cafes, which stands for coffee, coffins, and conversations. I need to get a better name for that. But anyway, it's we present information to people in the community that might not know, like ambulance wish or tender funerals or understanding voluntary assisted dying, or no one dies alone program. So we present information that people can come along and listen to. And I think those sorts of things are really, really important for people just to get access to, so they can what is this all about? What does it mean for me? And then they have a little bit of a networking conversation at the back end of that. But for my kids, though, those things are very strange. It's not part of the way that they live their life.
Well, you wouldn't expect them to at that age, but I actually have worked with people that are just early planners. They're in their 20s, their 30s. Maybe they're interested in being an end of life doula, but they maybe have a parent that's not well, or they have, just with, saw their grandmother die and it was a horrible experience. It's just like you being motivated because your mother died so early, you coming back home because your dad was dying. You know, we're just all going to go through it. So it's never too early, it's just never too early to face the truth.
And I think the skill set that I bring, and I think it's really important for people listening or watching this podcast. I'm no expert when it comes to palliative and end of life care. I'm passionate about that, and I know enough, dare I say, to be dangerous. But for me, it's a real thing. I've lived with the concept of death my entire life. It's shaped who I have been. I'm not afraid of it. In fact, my own desire and need to know who my mother was has meant that I've been very curious and very accepting of what happens in life. And so, but the strength that I do bring, I think anyway, to Busselton Hospice Care is the idea about how do you build communities? How do you build strong communities that work together on things that they see as being important? When I was first employed by the board, being a charity organisation that didn't get any ongoing service level funding from any form of government, and having been around not-for-profit organisations for quite a while, I can see the risk in that you're employing for the first time a full-time CEO to go about doing the work. And it really was a hard-nosed conversation. How long can you afford this risk? And so it was a couple of years. And so I knew that I had a short window in which to operate to try and generate the revenue to support the concept that the board, the staff and the volunteers were so passionate about. And so you can't sit back and wait for that to happen, Claire. You just got to get out there and you have to go and build connections. You have to find those people that get what it is that you're doing or are curious about what you're doing and weave them into stronger networks. And I think that's part of what I've been doing. And, one of the other challenges from the board was to try and attract service level funding. And that ain't easy. We kind of sit within the gap between the federal and the state system here in Western Australia.
Now the state actually is putting more. I mean, isn't there some money you can get from the state now that maybe you weren't able to get before?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting area to be in. I think if you go back 35 years to when the board started, they were trying to get the hospital system to respond more effectively to people who are palliative or end of life. Now, if we look at the partnership arrangement we have with WA Country Health Service and the partnership our volunteers have, we look after the social and emotional support and the nurses look after the clinical side. That symbiotic relationship is working and it's working well. And so the hospital system is investing more money into professional nurses, doctors who are taking an interest in end of life, and they should, because there's a tsunami of aging coming.
Oh my God!
The baby boomers are getting old, and by 2030, the population here at Busselton will be closer to 60,000. It's increasing 3% year on year. The number of people aged 80 and over will quadruple, and of that cohort, two-thirds will have two or more chronic diseases. And so, there's this big cohort that are moving. So the medical system needs to be ready for that. Mm-hmm. But the worry, and I think this is where the hospice in Busselton is fairly unique, is it's always represented the voice of the community. Mm-hmm. And it brings the community's voice into the hospice. And so I think that is a kind of an antidote for it not becoming medicalised, for the model to be seen as a whole of community response to dying death in Busselton. And that's, for me, is quite unique from what I understand here in Western Australia, that it's a volunteer-led, professional volunteer service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I'm up there on the hospice ward, and I see people that, are coming into the hospice ward for the first time. And I'm just telling the audience, it's beautiful. The ambience, the artwork, the plants, the music, the sea breezes from the ocean. I mean, it's just beautiful. So you've got this incredible clinical support of the nurses, and you've got the palliative care of that are in the rural areas, the country areas that are in there now too. And these professional volunteers, and when I say professional, I mean, we go through a lot of training, and most of us have some sort of other background that we bring even though the role of the volunteer is very different than, say, an end-of-life doula or from being a nurse or something like that, you just know what hat you're wearing when. But when people come into that hospice and see it for the first time, oh my God, they are just blown away, and they leave with so much gratitude and so much new awareness, having the opportunity to be with their loved one when they die. They are learning themselves how to die because they see a very positive, uplifting experience that, yes, it's a medical event, but when it gets to that stage, it's not anymore. It's a spiritual event. It's an emotional event. It's that holistic approach that only palliative care can give in that hospice model. And I'm actually very glad that people are being encouraged to die at home too, because that is 80% of the people want to stay at home. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
but a lot of people come not just into the hospice wing because they're dying, it's because their caregiver needs respite care, or they just need to have some 24-hour support while they're doing symptom management and getting their pain meds right and things like that. I mean, it's just so much more than some cold place to die. It's just the opposite of that.
Yeah, and there's probably a couple of things that I would say to that from that kind of community development practitioner hat that I wear.
Mm.
That because there's been over such a long period of time, so many local families whose loved ones have died at hospice, and they have a connection, and they've felt that beautiful experience you've just described, Claire. That stays with them. And so when I go out into the community now, 30 to 35 years later, that's what I walk into.
Yeah.
And one of my great colleagues here in Western Australia wrote a book called Weaving Tapestries. It's kind of like the community development workers handbook. And I always think about community in terms of a tapestry. And sometimes the tapestry is not as formed as what it could be. And the role maybe of the community development worker is to grab some of the threads and pull them together and, to weave it into a coherent picture. Not the picture that I see, but the picture that they see. And I think that that's been made easier here in Busselton, even though it's hard work. It's not just all about cups of coffee and good conversations.
A lot can happen over a cup of tea.
Oh, it does, and it will always.
Yeah.
For me, it's about the work was already there, and there was always the trust capital in Busselton Hospice Care to do the right thing. So when I go out into the community with ideas for whatever it might be, fundraising or campaigns, it's not difficult to find those threads. They're there. And so really I'm just uncovering the connections that already exist within the community. But the flip side of that, I think, and it's worth mentioning this because it's what makes it a little bit harder, sometimes impossible for community development workers to work within. There's quite a few traditions about how do you work with people to create change. Community development's one. Unfold. How do we work with people to unfold their potential to do their, the work their way? Another tradition is community service delivery. And so probably from about the early 80s, Australia has been heavily encultured into a service delivery paradigm, which is you have somebody who funds, somebody who provides, and somebody who purchases. And so we have this model that we've created, which is, only those things that are defined as being important are the things that are funded. And it makes it really, really difficult when you don't fit within that box. And that's what Busselton Hospice Care kind of finds itself being within. And so because we don't fit within the activity-based funding model and all those sorts of things, people are not prepared to fund it. But They love the fact that we're here, and they love the fact that we do this work, and we inject, nearly 16,000 hours of volunteer time per annum, which is the equivalent of about $700,000 at ATO, in-kind volunteer rates. Mm-hmm. It's a huge amount of gift of time and talent, but we don't get that funded. And maybe we just have to try and wait for the right opportunity for people, decision makers, to see that is something we'd want to fund. But I worry about that, because I think that sometimes
you've touched on, I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but you've touched on what I think is exactly the problem, is that it's really it's a public policy issue. It's not a Busselton hospice issue. I mean, we're great. It is just the whole approach to, I think it just needs to happen at a much higher level at the top, and all nonprofits are kind of fighting for the same dollars. So you're out there with people trying to compete when you shouldn't be competing. You should be working together as a unit to support this generational demographic change that's happening in Busselton and everywhere else in Australia and everywhere else in the world. That the silver tsunami of elderly people are going to need outstanding medical care. And they certainly have that here, but the transitions that someone goes through in a chronic progressive illness needs support at every stage. And so there needs to be a seamless transition from curative with palliative care, than just palliative care or hospice care. I mean, it should be a seamless thing so people aren't struggling to, what do I do next? Where do I go next? There should be a group support, not just from Busselton Hospice, but I think from the medical community, not just the hospital community, but the medical community. That's what I would.
Yeah, and I think in Western society, that's what I'm familiar with, and I've got colleagues that I know right across the Western world who are working in community development. Our enemy is loneliness. We work really, really hard to create strength within community, to create connection within community, to find ways in which people can, it's not all about connection. Some people are quite happy to spend time reading a book, so there's a whole different question there about how do you get introverts to connect with one another in meaningful and valued ways. They'll find their way.
Because they're going to die too.
Yeah, that's right. But I think that, in Busselton, that worries me. That in Western society, we know that loneliness is almost at epidemic proportions. Mm-hmm. And it is landing with our elderly people in a kind of lumpy way. It's almost those people are invisible within the community, and people assume that they're okay, but they're disconnected from their own family systems in some ways. So I worry about that in terms of how do we become visible. So that's why there's a lot of work done out in the community to be visible, to be heard, to be seen, for people to understand, those people from Busselton Hospice, they're doing some different things. Let's get curious about that. And so to normalise the conversation around dying and death, and normalise the ability for people to come together in groups to talk about such things, I think they're really, really important. And I really wanted to touch base with you, Claire, on that kind of the third thing that my board were really interested in, me in particular exploring, was a social enterprise. A way in which we could be a master of our own destiny without relying on KPIs. Well, we've all got to have KPIs, but, somebody giving me some money and being reliant on their KPIs.
I don't know the term KPIs. I don't know what that is.
Oh, sorry, key performance indicators, outcomes,
okay. I know
all that sort of stuff, all the things you've got to do to justify that, you're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And, they're very important. I'm not arguing against those things. They're very, very important. They have their place. So one of the things that we did is we looked around to see what sort of social enterprises, those things that we could do for purpose, where we could generate revenue of our own. And there was a movement that was starting to occur in regional Western Australia, started in Pingelly. For those people that don't know Western Australia, that's out in our wheatbelt area, where they'd had a number of, because our wheat belt has become very, very dominant in terms of agricultural production.
Yeah.
Farms are getting bigger. Machinery is getting better. We've got almost like an absolute advantage in the growing of grain in regional Western Australia, and that means that communities are getting smaller. But then you've got farmers who have been connected to their land, to that country for generations. And so where do they go when they're reaching end of life? And so in Pingelly, they had a couple of really bad horror stories where much loved local people had to leave their community to go and get residential aged care and support down near the city. Mm-hmm. And they kind of got disconnected. That loneliness thing pops up again because they're disconnected from their support networks.
Yeah.
So 5 community resource centres, which is a small funded model in regional Western Australia by the state government, got together and they created the Pingelly Somerset Alliance, and they created Staying in Place Pingelly, which was a group of people that were committed to the idea of building relationships with people who qualified for a home care package, so 65 and over with needs. And so they partnered with an aged care provider and they partnered with a network of independent home care contractors that could then go out and support somebody who had social and emotional needs, personal care needs, palliative care needs. And so this model has started to emerge right across regional Western Australia. There's now 51 staying in place entities right across regional Western Australia. And we have one called Staying in Place Busselton. And we now have 12 clients. We'd love to get to 22, which is my break-even point.
That's fantastic, James. This is the first I'm hearing of this. This is wonderful.
Yeah. So, well, and we've got a one full-time equivalent employee. So I've got two employees working 0.6 and 0.4, and they're the relationship managers. So somebody qualifies for a package, they get a care plan. The care plan comes down to us, and then we work with that person. We build a relationship with them. It's their package. It's their way. It's again, those community development principles coming very, very strongly to the fore here, which is, you decide who comes into your home and when they come in. And if you're not happy with them.
I'm going to stop here because some of these U.S. audience members aren't going to know about the aged care packages. And I want to brag about Australia here is because there are social services that are provided for people when they start having disabilities or when they start having life-limiting illnesses of some sort. And these age benefit packages are staged. So, you may just come in and you just need someone to do housekeeping for you or kind of help you. But as a disease progresses, you're going to need a higher level of care, occupational therapy or something like that, that would support you to stay in your home longer than if you, instead of going to my worst nightmare, a long-term care facility. My daughters know never to send me to a long-term care facility, but I'm doing everything here to age in place at home. And I am very aware of these aged care packages, and I think it's a brilliant idea for Busselton Hospice to be part of that, because that's going to be the kind of support that these folks will need at some point.
Yeah, and so look, we're in a competitive environment here. So there's a number of aged care providers that are here, and we're not the aged care provider. The risk and compliance and quality assurance is held with the aged care provider, one of whom that we're in partnership with is based in Fremantle in Perth, Western Australia, and the other one is a national organisation. But they both those organisations understand that they can't be all things to all people, and the relationship that exists between a person who's aging in place is somebody in their local community. And for us, that's us. It kind of does have alignment with our vision of supporting life lived well, dying, death and bereavement. And so we're connecting with people much earlier in the space, and we're actually getting paid for that work that we do from a relationship management perspective. Now, we're not there yet. As I said, we're working to our break-even point, but each new client that we get is increasing our capacity to generate revenue. Now, here's the really exciting part, Claire. This is the stuff that I'm passionate about, and I'm really hopeful that we can achieve. So if you start to generate revenue and you're not reliant on government, and we've never been reliant on government, we're not, we get the occasional grant here and there, but no ongoing service level funding.
Mm-hmm.
If we start to generate some of the money of our own, then we get to decide what we do with that. And I'm very much about this compassionate communities model, which is about who are those people in community that don't qualify for any government support, who have been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness and who are doing it tough. How can we take our model out to them? It's still volunteer-based, mm-hmm. but it does need, our model is that you have a paid person, part-time in the middle, that holds the space for volunteers to be successful. So how do we pay for that new model? Well, we pay for it if we're successful with staying in place. And I think that for me is the future. I'd love to have $100,000 a year per year for the next 3 years from the state government. Do I think I'm going to get $100,000 from the state government per year for the next 3 years? No. It would be great, but so we have to do something. We can't just sit there and be a victim in all this. It's about getting out there and doing what we think is right.
Yeah.
And it's, for me, it goes back to one of my favourite little sayings by a lady called Margaret Mead, mm-hmm. who said that never doubt that a small group of concerned and thoughtful citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for me, just we have to do it. And we have to try it. And if it doesn't work, because it's a small business, just like any other small business, and we know that 50% of all small businesses fall over within the first 5 years. So we know all the risks. We've done all that kind of risk management planning, but we've given it a red hot go. And I think that's what Busselton Hospice Care is all about. We just give it a red hot go.
I think there's looking forward, not only is there a need there, but it's just going to get greater. So I'm very excited about this. One of the things that I wanted to focus on while we were here, because I'm timing this to get this out, because August 8th is Dying to Know Day. And it was started by Groundswell. There's a great story around how Groundswell got involved in this with Jesse Williams, but anyway, it was taken over by what was then like the North in Perth. It's like Beach Cities or something, and now it has a new name. It has a new name that's sponsoring Dying to Know Day, but they've continued this on, and the focus is to teach death literacy and to talk about it. So I really want people that are listening to this to get involved locally in whatever is happening in Australia for them that has to do with dying to know. There are a lot of different activities. Are we involved in anything this year in the Dying to Know Day?
Yeah, I was just speaking to the Cemeteries Administration Officer at our local government, City of Busselton. Mm-hmm. We've had a couple of meetings now, and we're going to run at the City of Busselton, the Underlup Room. We're going to run an advanced care planning workshop. And so we're putting the call out to people to come along. The city will provide the venue, provide afternoon tea, we'll provide the expertise around, what is an advanced care plan, why is it important, how can I do it? Once I've done it, what are the key questions? Once I've done that, where do I make that visible to people that might need to know about what my wishes are. And also at the same time, because the local government looks after all the cemeteries and manages them, there's an opportunity for them to ask questions about, those curiosities, about, well, how much does a plot cost? If I want to be cremated, that's okay. Well, what's the rules around composting? All these sorts of things that might be curious to people, but they just don't know the rules around.
Yeah.
And so the local government has got some fantastic human, capital there that can answer those questions on behalf of the community.
You know what would really be great to include in that? I mean, we're brainstorming here, or I am, but if there was someone that was an estate attorney or some sort of attorney type person that could not give advice there, but emphasize how important it is to use, whether it's a fiduciary financial planner or an estate attorney, or using professionals that to make an informed decision about these very important uh, having the proper paperwork. It's just
Yeah,
really important that they don't go to the post office and fill something out themselves and say, I've done it, because
yeah.
that generally is not good enough when push comes to shove.
We had a Triple C cafe, or probably going back about 10 to 12 months ago now,
Hmm.
by one of our local legal representatives who kind of specialised in probate, end of life estates. And her presentation, usually people get up with a PowerPoint and that sort of stuff, but Erin didn't. She just got up and spoke, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
So the title of the Triple C Cafe was Dilemmas After Death, Common Mistakes in Estate Planning. And it was just, it blew my mind, the stuff that I thought that I knew, but I just didn't. And, how important it is to get the right advice around preparing wills. And interestingly, that's the time to start thinking about bequests as well, about, how might you pay forward the success that you've had in your life to other people. So there's lots of really interesting things that you can find in your community, people that have got knowledge, and put them in front of people that have got the interest to know that. And I think that's what Dying to Know Day is all about.
Yeah.
It's about, how do we have those conversations of importance, and we share that. And, if we're in a group and there's 20 of us and we go, oh, gosh, does anyone know that? And everyone's shaking their head. And then we find that person, because they have to be there. So I really do think, the concepts of death cafes and Triple C cafes are built upon that beautiful concept of having conversations with one another, and sharing conversations of importance and checking egos at the door. And, it's not about who knows the most. It's just about, how do we find out the most that will benefit us?
So, people can make donations to Busselton Hospice, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all ears for that sort of stuff. Yeah,
Say
look,
people are listening to this and they go, I want to support Busselton Hospice. How do they do that?
oh, well, music to my ears, Claire. Well done. I will settle accounts later. No,
No, I mean that's why we're here. Honest.
uh, look, we have a revenue generation strategy that we've got, which covers right from, trying to get government grant money right through to bequests. But we do fundraising events. We've got Go Blue for June. We've got on the winter solstice, 150 people running into the water screaming, living life large, and
Was it one of those people?
and then donating money to Busselton Hospice Care, because that's where the crazy idea came from. We've done cow poo lotto. Some of your listeners might not know that, but they're quite happy to reach out for me. But if you really wanted to donate to us, we're a charity from Australia. We're registered with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission. So we've got what we call DGO1 status. So all donations to us are fully tax deductible.
So can we just go onto a
Website, yeah,
There's a donation button.
www.busseltonhospicecare.inc.org.au.
And there's a donation button that I can
There's
just
a donation button. Yep.
No, I think that's good. You guys, nonprofits have to be profitable. So I mean,
Yep.
I really try to I don't know. It's just hard. I love what it is that you're doing, and I love that you're here doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
just thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Look, I mean, it's one of those things where, when you value something, yes, whatever services we provide free and predominantly uncapped, right from, hospice volunteer service through complementary therapies, through our bereavement support program, any community education, the Miss Doris V. Low Resource Hub on Ageing, Dying, Death and Bereavement. They're all volunteer-led. And so if somebody needs information, we will accommodate that. We will try to provide that information to people when they need it and they need it most. And so those sorts of things, they do rely on donations. We could go to a fee-for-service model, but I don't know. I think that might change the context of who we are. And it's so we generate the revenue in different ways to support the model that we have, which is we have small part-time paid staff who hold the space for our 150 volunteers to be successful, to unlock that gift that they have to pay forward to other people. And it's an incredible organisation to be part of, Claire, and it's so fantastic that you're part of it as well. It's it's great. My old man said to me, "Find a job that you love, James, and you'll never work another day in your life." And I don't feel like I'm working, even though it's hard work.
It is hard work, but I mean, I love the people that I volunteer with, and I love Kelly, and I love, it's just like the nicest people that are unified in supporting people in their most challenging moments. And that's, what means so much to me is
the people that turn up here, Claire, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with them, tackling some really difficult situations. But geez, you have no problem standing next to them. They're people. They've got such humanity that they carry with them, that it makes the challenge so much easier when you're standing alongside somebody who sees what it is that you see. So I love working here.
Well, thank you so much for being part of this podcast today, James. And I want to encourage people to participate all across Australia. There's some place you can find a Dying to Know Day, and I'm going to have the link wherever you are that you can find different events that are happening in your Tasmania, Northern Territory, wherever you are. There are events that are happening, and I will also put the link to the Busselton Hospice website. And just can't thank you enough, James, for being part of my life. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Claire. Appreciate it. And goodbye to all of your listeners and viewers. And if they were curious about that picture that's been behind me the whole time, that is probably one of the most beautiful places in the world. That's Cape Naturalist, which is on the Indian Ocean, and it's been very wet over the last day or two.
And cold. It's been so
freezing.
Oh my God. Not normally that way here, but yeah. That's my ocean right there too. So, okay, I'm gonna say adieu and thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Dying Your Way. If it's inspired you, then please spread the word. Leave a rating and review so others can find out about us. To learn more, connect with us on Facebook or our website at dyingyourway.com. A special thank you for the artist Mel Dobra for letting us use her song, Smoke and Flame, as the soundtrack of our show. I invite you to return, hear each episode, and be part of the conversation on death literacy. I am Claire O'Berry, and this is Dying Your Way.